Welcome to another episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? A place where creatives and book lovers and writers just come together to talk about the thing we love the most, which is art and books. And I hope that this is not your first time. If it is, I'm your host, Karen E. Osborne, author of women's suspense books, Getting It Right, Tangled Lies, this year's Reckonings, and I just got a contract for book number 4 coming out next year. I'm so excited. And my guest today is Joanne Kukanza Easley. And she has a book that has come out recently, and it is called I'll Be Seeing You. It's a historical novel, correct, Joanne?
That's right. It starts in 1938 and takes us all the way to 1985.
Doesn't that sound intriguing? She's going to tell us all about it. She's also a multi-award-winning author. She has another book called Sweet Jane and another one called Just One Look. So welcome, welcome, Joanne. We're so glad you're with us.
Well, thank you very much, Karen. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I am delighted. So before we dive into your latest book, which we want to hear all about, tell us a little bit about your writing journey. How did you come to this? How did you write the first book, the second book? Just give us a real flavor for your writing journey.
Okay. Well, I always wanted to be a writer ever since I read my first Nancy Drew book and was just captivated by creating such a world. And I wanted to do that too. I didn't get serious about it until I was in my 20s. That's when I started taking classes and going to workshops and started writing some short stories and my first novel, which has yet to be published, but maybe someday.
So you wrote your first novel in your 20s?
Yes.
Wow. Go ahead. Tell us what happened next.
Well, life got in the way and I put my writing aside as I moved across the country with my corporate husband, had children, and every time I moved, everything went in a box. So I had to unpack everything and find another writing group and start all over with every move. Then finally, when I retired, I determined that a book that I'd been working on off and on for 5 years, it was time to finish it, now or never.
And that first one was?
That was Sweet Jane.
That was Sweet Jane is the first one that came out. And then
Right.
You've been writing ever since?
I have. Since I was retired, I have been writing full time. While I was waiting for a contract for Sweet Jane, I didn't want to remain idle. So I wrote my second book, Just One Look. And that is set in my hometown of Chicago.
That is so cool. So when you were back in the after you finished your Nancy Drew books, but you were between in your 20s and your 30s, were there books that inspired you? Were there books back then that you loved that kept pulling you back to wanting to be a writer?
Very much so. Even as a teenager, I would steal my mother's books, and I read the popular fiction of the day in the 60s and the 70s. And then I was just completely enamored with John Irving and his first book, The World According to Garp. That was very formative. And I love Pat Conroy. His book, Beach Music, just excellent, excellent book. So
he writes so lyrically. His descriptions are amazing. You just brought up the name of 2 of my favorites too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's awesome. So historical fiction. So I need some advice, actually. A little free advice. So I am finishing up in historical fiction. And when you were writing yours, did you research as you went? You're writing and then you go, oh, would that have happened? Or did you do a whole lot of research in the beginning? Or how did you find that? Because, we have to be so meticulous about the details of the time. So how did you approach research?
Well, my first 2 books are set primarily in the 60s and 70s, going into the early 80s. And I lived during that time. So I did have personal experience to draw upon. But there's also a lot of research. I wanted to know what buildings were there. I had to research the historical events of the time because I refer to them in the book. And all my book titles are song titles. So I researched the music of the time as well, because I make a lot of musical references in the book. And then as I'm writing, as a scene comes up, I need to know, was that restaurant there in that year? What happened during the riots in Chicago in 1968? I had to research all of that. So it's a combination of drawing from personal experience and researching as I go. And boy, you can go down a rabbit hole. You can take so much time away from the actual writing as you research, but it's all good. It's all information that you may use some other time.
That is so true. I've had to try and figure out what trains and trolleys and, you know, how would she have gotten from here to there in 1924? And so I find myself stopping constantly, and it bumps my flow. I like making stuff up.
Yes, but there's probably not too many people alive now that would know the bus routes in 1924, but I understand that urge to be accurate, and I strive for that too.
Yes, I could just say she took a bus. That sounds good. So tell us about I'll Be Seeing You.
Okay, it is based on a character that's in Sweet Jane. It's not really a sequel. It's kind of like a prequel and a sequel, but it's Lauren's own story. She was Jane's AA sponsor and a woman of a certain age, which fascinated me since I am a woman of a certain age. And I had written a character that was older. So that was something that my critique groups had been so positive about this character. They were really fascinated with her. So it was always in the back of my mind as I wrote Sweet Jane that someday I would tell Lauren's story. She wouldn't tell Jane her story. She just made a few little offhand remarks and left it at that. So I created her past. I start the book in 1938 on a Texas cattle ranch where she's taken by her flamboyant aunt for a whirlwind trip to Manhattan. And after that, ranch life didn't satisfy and she wanted to escape. And she was Miss Mineral Wells in the Fort Worth Stock Show Parade in 1940. And in those days, back in the 40s and 50s, modeling scouts would go to these events and look for talent. And she was seen by a modeling scout and offered a contract to learn how to model in Manhattan. And her parents kind of reluctantly let her go because she'd be living with her aunt. But there was really no supervision, and Lauren got into a boatload of trouble. It took her years to come out of it. She had, I illustrate in the book how she became an alcoholic and why, and she did what's called geographical cures. When things got really hot at home, she packed up and moved. And she did that a few times until she settled in Austin, Texas. And from there, she eventually got sober and reached her goal that she'd always had in the back of her mind, to have her own business, which wasn't easy in those days. But she got sober and she had a successful business. And then I skip ahead 20 years.
Oh.
And yeah, it's a different kind of plot line. But 20 years later, she's sitting in her office at her food co-op, which she has just taken private from the original investors, and a man appears. And this man was her third husband that she left after a tragic incident. And she never thought she'd see him again. And he read about her financial and business success in the Dallas newspaper and drove himself down to Austin to reunite with her. And she's rocked by this, and she's really not sure what she's going to do about it. So the last third or so of the book deals with how she has to come to grips with how she treated him in the past and make a decision.
Yeah, wow, that's intriguing. Leaps of time is quite a skill to be able to, help us leap in time, your reader to go along with you. So that sounds amazing. That
Well,
sounds
I used
wonderful.
a device by having her meet with Jane from Sweet Jane, who is now a psychotherapist, and she tells Jane her past, and we catch up on those missing 20 years somewhat.
Oh, that's clever. That's very good. I like that. Oh, this sounds very intriguing. So, what do you want your readers after they finish? They close the book. And of course, we want them to just love the characters and want to know what happens, hold on to them. But in addition to just loving the story, what do you want your readers to take away from reading your book?
Well, that you can go through struggles, hard times, go through the school of hard knocks, and then graduate and move on with your life and put the past in perspective and triumph over your setbacks.
Yeah, that's the truth. I'm living proof of that.
It's like real life stuff.
It's real life stuff. Absolutely. Absolutely. So are you working on anything now?
Yes, I'm writing a follow-up to I'll Be Seeing You. It's called Higher Love. And once again, Lauren is thrown into the breach when someone from her past unexpectedly shows up at her doorstep.
Hmm. Lauren's had quite the life, hasn't she?
She has, and it's not a romantic connection that appears, but it's from the past, and
Somebody
I don't
from
want to give too much away.
No, you have to buy the books and read them, people.
Yes,
This is the goal. And then you have to
absolutely.
write wonderful reviews because we live and die by lovely reviews.
That's the
And
truth.
so is there anything that you read recently that you could recommend to our viewers?
Yes, Hannah and Ariella is a book written by Johnny Bernhardt. I believe it's her fourth novel. She has written a very timely story. It's about human trafficking at the Texas border,
Mm,
and it features a character who's in her 70s. So that interested me too. An older female protagonist who's a strong woman. And I live not far from the Texas border, so it had that personal connection and interest for
mhm.
me. So I do recommend that. I've been reading a lot of Texas fiction lately. Uh, Fireside, Texas. There's a couple of books on that, and it's a kind of a warm, fuzzy family thing with a lot of family secrets, which I like too.
Yes, I love family secrets. All my books, I have family secrets. And interestingly, you talk about 70-year-old protagonists. So in my book, Tangled Lies, my murder mystery, Vera she's 70 years old. And, and
I have it. I have your book, and it's
oh,
on my
dear.
to be read list, and I will
Oh,
read and review.
okay, thank you. Well, she's a 70-year-old protagonist.
Well,
And
good.
I agree. It's nice to have older women out there being strong and successful.
Yes,
Yes, we older women are worthy of our own books.
absolutely.
So this has been wonderful. If our watchers, our readers would like to find out more about you, they'd like to find out more about your books, follow you, how do they do that?
Well, I have a website, JoanneEasleyAuthor.com, and I have a Facebook writers page, Joanne R. Easley Writer. I'm also on Instagram, Joanne Easley Writer. And right now I am running a Goodreads giveaway for I'll
Oh,
Be Seeing You. Yes, it runs through, I think, December 11th or 12th.
then it'll
So it's
be over by the time all of our guests are seeing this.
okay.
Yeah, as I think you guys know this, but we pre-record and then play. So they missed your
Okay.
giveaway, but I bet it went really well.
We'll see.
Too soon to know that.
Right.
Yes, yes. So I thank all of you for being with us today. We're so glad. And you heard both Joanne and me say how important reviews are. We hope you'll follow both of us. You'll follow us on our social media. And if you read something that you love that we wrote, please write a review. And if you didn't love it so much, just send us an email. You don't need to put it on Amazon. Thanks, everybody. It was lovely meeting you, Joanne.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Bye, everybody.